Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Maria Glendinning, and I'll be your MC for today's presentation on unmasking ransomware, proactive strategies to safeguard your organization. In today's session, we will be moderated by Doran Colton, who is the Fidelis Security Senior Product Manager. But before we start, may I please go through a couple of housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded, so the recording will be sent afterwards to all who registered after the presentation. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section and we will address them towards the end of the webinar. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll hand you over to Doran.
Hi. So today we are going to talk about ransomware, and I'm going to describe in general how ransomware works, what are the steps it is doing during the attack, describe how Fidelis products and detection techniques can detect a ransomware that is operating inside your organization, and that's before the damage is caused to the organization. Then I'll go over several tactics and techniques ransomware are using, and how Fidelis products are able to um, uh, cope with that or detect the activities of the ransomware. So first, I would say that what everybody knows about ransomware is that it encrypts files and locks endpoints and servers in the organization. This is the goal, to disrupt and stop the operation of the organization and demand ransom in order to decrypt and release the system when the attacker gets the ransomware itself. Now, today, any size of organization can be a target of a ransomware attack. It can be small or large organization, as long as the attackers believe they can get money from the target or from the targeted organization. And we are seeing attacks on hospitals, on banks, on stores, and many other different verticals. The attacked organization can try to restore the data or can pay the ransom. At the end of the day, it depends what the ransomware did, whether they only encrypted data or they also exfiltrated the data. There's a difference between the two options. How well the organization is prepared for attacks like ransomware, and how well they can carry out the recovery plans that hopefully they have. So if we let's start a little bit with some statistics. Those statistics were released by Sophos last year, and they are talking about the early months of 2023. The report that they published covers 3,000 IT and security professionals in 14 different countries. As you can see, 66% of the organizations that participated in this survey were hit by ransomware. And this is, a very high ratio. It means that two-thirds of every, you have a chance of 66% to be attacked by a ransomware. Now, 36% of the attacks exploited vulnerabilities in the operating system and in different kinds of software products, and 29% of the attacks were using compromised credentials. In 76% of the attacks that succeeded, data was encrypted, and in 30%, data was also exfiltrated. So it's encrypted and exfiltrated. And there's a difference a different application for that, or a different meaning, because when the data is also exfiltrated, the attacker has a much stronger position. As you can see, most of the organizations were able to restore the data, 97%. However, almost half the organizations paid the ransom, which means that they were not really ready properly for the attacks. But at the end of the day, those attacks that succeeded cost a lot of money to the companies. And we can see here what is the monetary impact of a ransomware attack. The average ransom itself was $1.5 million, and it was doubled from the previous year, 2022. The recovery itself was around $1.5 million on average. So the recovery process, including all its activity, all the activities required to deal with the issue, including the revenue that the organization lost and all the activities the companies had to do, like notify customers, connect with the credit card companies, etc., was on average $1.8 million. Now, if the organization paid the ransom, the total recovery cost was $2.6 million. If the organization was able to restore the data from a backup based on their backup plan, the average cost was reduced to $1.6 million. Now, what is the recovery time? How long it took the company to be fully operational again? So we can see here that 24% of the organization, the recovery time was between 1 to 6 months, which means that you are not fully operational, not fully functional for up to 6 months. If, on the other hand, the organization had a good backup plan, but could be accessed, because some of the attacks also able to encrypt the backup plan. So if they were able to restore the data from the backup, 45% were able to recover and be fully operational after 1 week. And if the organization decided to pay the ransom, 39% were able to recover in 1 week. So just based on this information, you can see how important it is. Well, first of all, to prevent the infection, but afterwards, having a good backup plan that is properly tested and it's available even if most of the assets and data of the organization is locked, in order to decrypt the data. Of course, it is better to take all the required measures to prevent the initial asset infection, and that is why you should be hunting all the time for attackers in your networks. But we know that, as you know, prevention is a must, but organizations are still being infected. That's why detection is so important. Some history about ransomware. So probably one of the first ransomware attack, was the AIDS Trojan back in 1989. It was kind of a virus that was distributed using a floppy disk. For those that remember the look of the 5.25 floppies, the note or the message that the attacker displayed the organization that were infected and data was encrypted, was to send $198 to a post office box in Panama in order to release the systems. Imagine how long you had to wait to get your information back in case you did not have a backup and decided to pay. Now, the biggest ransomware attack that was published, and we know that not all organizations are publishing the attacks on them, was in 2021 on Colonial Pipeline. The tech disrupted the fuel supplies in the US East Coast, and the company paid between $40 million to $50 million to get the data back. So there are different kinds of ransomware types. We can partition those ransomware types into several segments based on the method of their operation. The type that most people are aware of is the encryptors. It encrypts files, demand ransom, and when paid, provide the decryption keys so you can get your data back. The second type is the lockers. It locks asset endpoints that they were able to infect. To make this type of attack a success, the attacker should be able to move laterally and infect a significant number of assets, especially the servers having the data of the organization. If only endpoints are encrypted and locked, while the organization is keeping the data on data server in its data center, then the impact on the organization is limited. You can just you can just re-image the locked asset. Actually, this is true to any ransomware. So if the ransomware is unable to move laterally enough and find the valuable data of the organization, then the impact of the attack is reduced because you would re-image the assets that are locked and everything is good. The next type is the ransomware that exfiltrate data from the organization. Now, this one is, I would say, it's more dangerous because if the company refuses to pay the ransom, the attackers can publish the exfiltrated data. This is a major threat to any to the reputation of any company. The next one is interesting. It's scareware. It threatens the company that they will publish the exfiltrated data, but you really don't know whether they exfiltrated the data or they did not. So they don't encrypt traffic, but they claim they exfiltrate data, and you don't have a way to know whether they really exfiltrated or not, unless you are able to hunt and understand everything that the attacker has done inside the organization. Now, the double extortion ransomware, like its name suggests, it encrypts the data and exfiltrates the data. So if you refuse to pay, they will start publishing the data, and you have to decide whether to pay or take the hit on your business and reputation. We have to understand that if the attackers succeeded to exfiltrate data, the status of the company is worse. Even if the company have a good backup plan and decide not to pay the ransom, they will have a major hit when the attacker start publishing the exfiltrated data. So bottom line here is it is as important to prevent the encryption of files as it is to prevent the leakage, or even or preventing the leakage is even more important than the preventing the encryption, because if you have a good backup plan, you will be able to resume operation quite quickly. In the last years, ransomware as a service became more popular. The service provides the attackers mechanism to distribute the malware. It provides the mechanism of the command and control, and also the infrastructure to collect the ransom. When an attacker is, using such a service, they can focus all their efforts and time on building the malware itself, how it moves around the organization, how it finds the valuable data, and how it encrypts the data. All the other operations are provided by the by the service for the ransomware. Now, what are the methods to defend against ransomware attacks? I would say, bottom line, it is not that different from other cybersecurity recommendations, how to protect and keep the security of your organization. What, as we saw, it is very important to have, it is very important to have a good backup and recovery plan and that is properly tested, and you know for sure it is working. The company should be upgrading their operating system and software products and use the latest patches. Remember that many of the malware infections are not zero days. They are using known vulnerabilities that patches exist for them, and you have to patch these products in a timely manner. So patching operating system and patching software products is crucial, and it should be done in a timely manner. Organization having the expertise should be also using hunting technology for issues on their networks, to hunt for issues on their networks, or to use different kinds of external resources in order to find issues or attackers that are moving around in the organization. EPP and EDR became very popular, and they are the proper methodology and technique used today, as well as scanning each file, scanning each email, everything that comes into the organization is being scanned. And a very important recommendation is the employees' education. Employees should truly understand how to identify malicious links, wrong emails, and what might be the outcome if they click a malicious link or opening a file that they don't know who sent it to them. Now, what are the steps a ransomware attack does relating to the tactics in MITRE ATT&CK? So from here now, I'll relate also to the MITRE ATT&CK's tactics in their metrics. So the first step of any such attack is to infect asset inside the organization. That is the initial access, and in the next slide, I'll go over the most popular method to infect asset. Following the initial infection, the attacker has a foothold in the network inside the organization. At least one asset is infected, but the attacker does not have enough knowledge, or he doesn't have any knowledge even about the asset that was infected. He doesn't know a lot about the network, where is the valuable data of the company. The attackers start a process of reconnaissance, learning the environment, exploring the environment. This is the discovery, and it starts on the initial infected assets, and it continues to other assets in the network, to other subnets, to servers, and the attacker is looking for again, valuable information. So when he encrypt data, it will have an impact on the organization. In order to carry on the discovery, the ransomware will try to reach higher privilege that enable access to more resources in the network. When he gets higher privilege, he continues the discovery process to find the valuable data, like shared folders that can be encrypted or even where the backup system is located. The attacker needs to connect with command and control to download tools that are needed to perform his task, to exchange keys with the command and control, and also, if required, to exfiltrate data. As part of the discovery, the attacker is trying to move laterally inside the organization, infecting more assets and reaching other parts of the organization. Again, all that is part of the discovery, part of looking where is the valuable data of the organization. At that point, the attacker, after he discovered enough and he understands the network, he has enough assets that were infected because he was able to move laterally infect other assets. He has shared folders and data servers are in reach, which means that they are infected, and it can proceed to the what is called in the MITRE the impact phase, which is the actual file encryption and also the data exfiltration. Some of the ransomwares will also remove trails of their activities in the network because then they will be able to use the same ransomware in other environment. And then they will display to you the payment instruction. And if you pay and you're lucky, you will get the decryption key from the attacker. Now, the infection phase that ransomware is using is very similar. They are using very similar technique as other malwares. The goal is the same, infect assets. It can be phishing emails, including malicious links or PDF and Word files that when they are open, they download, they either download something or they infect your assets. Another method is when employees are accessing social networks, clicking a link by mistake, which infect their computers, or while looking at advertisement, you click a link and unfortunately it's malicious, and again, you infect the initial asset. So the infecting the initial asset is sometimes one of the difficult stuff for the attacker. So until now, I described the general way that ransomware is working, the type of ransomware, and now I would like to go over several of the products that Fidelis has in order to detect the activities of the malware and the phases or the tactics that was presented before. So Fidelis has a platform that is called Elevate. Elevate is an open XDR that includes network traffic analysis, deception, Active Directory intercept component, and endpoint detection and response. So I'll go over the components one by one, explaining how they work or what they provide and how it match the ransomware activities. So first, the network traffic analysis there are several products in the market doing NTA, network traffic analysis, but there's a huge difference between Fidelis and the other product. And that's because Fidelis actually inspects all ports and all port protocols, and it is parsing the data stream and detecting the attacker activities. The leading engine is what we call DSI, Deep Session Inspection. Unlike DPI, which is deep packet inspection that look at the level of packets, the deep session inspection assembles all the packets of a stream, a TCP connection or a TCP session, and it builds the entire session. So it enables to inspect the payload in a way you cannot inspect and you cannot detect if you look into single packets or even just few packets together. For example, if a file is downloaded over HTTP, all the packets in the HTTP session, which means that all the packets that will assemble the file will be assembled into one file, and the content of the entire file can be analyzed as one object. In fact, if the payload is also compressed or even compressed several times, the deep session inspection is able to first build, build the payload, then it is able to decompress the payload, and it can decompress the payload several times, and only then the analysis of the payload is working on the plain text that was decompressed. This means that if a payload includes malware or tools that are downloaded by the attacker in order to use them, the deep session inspection will detect the malware and the tools while the attacker is connecting with the command and control and downloading the tools. On top of the deep session inspection, our network traffic analysis includes anomaly detection, that as other NTAs have, and it is also running the deep packet inspection, the DPI. Now, the NTA provides real-time threat intelligence based on the data that the Fidelis Red research team is collecting, and we are also getting multiply threat intelligence information from other vendors, and we merge all that data into our feeds that are downloaded in real time to the system. Now, there's another interesting feature of the NTA that if you're doing hunting or you know that there's a new malware and you haven't seen it yet or it wasn't detected yet, it can be detected by Fidelis. And this is the ability to conduct what we call retrospective analysis on activities in the network. This is achieved by collecting for each session, for each connection, we are collecting the metadata of the session. The metadata would be, for example, who sent it to where, when, what is the IP, what is the name, the DNS that was used, and some information about the payload itself. For example, it can be hash, it can be all the headers of the protocols, etc. Now, this has huge value because even when a new malware is published, and as you know, there are 0 days, or there are malware that nobody is aware of, nobody is able to detect at the beginning, but afterwards, there is knowledge about this malware. So at that point of time, you can go over the metadata that was collected by Fidelis and find out whether one of your assets in the organization already has downloaded this malware. This is a huge difference between other products. So when looking at the detections the NTA provides, you can say that it is detecting the download of malwares using the email attachment. So when email attachments are downloaded, we are looking at email attachment and the email itself. If the attacker is trying to download something from by browsing, then it will, in order to do the initial access, that is also being detected. Afterwards, after the initial phase, and you have infected asset in the organization, it detects the communication of the attacker with the command and control to download tools that the ransomware is using, and it will also detect the exchange of keys and the data exfiltration. One thing I didn't mention before is the strong DLP functionality that our network traffic analysis is also providing. Now, the NTA is also able to detect scans running inside the organization, which is part of the discovery step. It also detects, queries. You can run queries from any infected asset to the Active Directories, and the ransomware is able to detect those queries that are suspicious, or somebody is trying to enumerate user or enumerate assets from Active Directory. Again, this is part of the discovery that the attacker is trying to learn the organization. And also the anomaly engine can also detect unusual rate of access, for example, to Active Directory, or when attacker is trying to encrypt files, then there's more activity with that shared folder or server that have the files. So this is the network traffic analysis. The next engine that we have, or product, is the deception. Now, the idea behind deception is that we know how attackers are working when they are inside the organization. Deception is not about prevention or detecting the initial infection. It's about, we know the attacker succeeded to infect an asset, but as mentioned before, he still don't know the network, the asset, the environment, and he start looking around, exploring the initial infected asset, then explore the network and in the Active Directory. Now they are looking for credentials, for valuable data to encrypt, or valuable data to exfiltrate. The deception takes advantage of knowing that this is how attackers work, and the deception covers the network and assets and also Active Directory with different deceptive entities, with the sole purpose to lure the attackers to interact with the deception, and by interacting with the deception, they actually reveal where they are, which asset are infected. So decoys are the first deception entity that are deployed. All access and interaction with decoys are malicious. No one in the organization should be accessing decoys. This is why each access is malicious, whether it is attacker or insider. The next deception entity, and a very important one, are the breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are fake static data that are deployed on assets in the organization and are pointing in the direction of decoys, leading the attackers to interact with the decoys. So one point, it's not an agent. It's static data that we deploy on asset in the organization. Now, this is data that we know the attacker is looking after. For example, you can deploy decoy that is running shared folder with deceptive files that looks important, like list of customers, credit card numbers, and future plans. Then you can deploy breadcrumbs on assets pointing to those shared folders where you put those files. And by mounting the shared folder on assets or having links to those shared folders, you actually lure the attacker to access the decoy and interact with the decoy. Now, the ransomware can reach the shared folders either when exploring the assets or because he would find links there and connection or mounted share folder, or when he tried to scan the network and then he's trying to encrypt the shared folders. Other examples would be, internal websites with breadcrumbs in the browser that are leading to the decoy website, which nobody in the organization should be accessing because nobody in the organization knows about it. If somebody from the organization is accessing those decoys or decoys application, it means that he was moving around, he was searching for it. He didn't find it by mistake. Another type of breadcrumbs is to add fake accounts to Active Directory and set credentials of the fake accounts in asset memory. Decoys are using those fake accounts to access the Active Directory as any other asset performing login, logout, etc. Now, ransomware is looking for those credentials in memory of the infected asset, and they are dumping the data, and they are trying to, crack the credentials and find out exactly the password. So if we look at the coverage of deception, or detection by deception. First, it detects the attackers that are scanning the network, even if it's done over a long period of time, like slow scanning. Then the different kind of breadcrumbs are covering the privilege escalation, the credential accessing, the discovery phase, and the lateral movement, and of course the impact when the attacker is trying to encrypt files. There are different kinds of detections. I don't want to cover all of them here. We talked about the breadcrumbs. Out table is another kind of breadcrumbs. You can say we are spoofing the out table because we know that the attacker are fetching data from the out table in order to access asset in the organization. Another method that we'll also see in a minute is wake on LAN, which means that the attacker is trying to find assets that are, in low power, and then you have the file encryption, which is the impact phase when the attacker is trying to encrypt files. Okay, the next part that we have is the Active Directory intercept. The Active Directory intercept has two parts. One is configuration issues, and another one is a different kind of attack that we are able to identify based on activities that we are able to monitor based on the Active Directory information security law. So the Active Directory actually maintains the information about all the IT resources of the organization. Ransomware can find in the Active Directory the data that they are looking for during the discovery phase, in the privilege escalation, and also when they are searching for credentials. The Active Directory intercept is analyzing the Active Directory configuration, searching for issues. Those are the exact issues that the ransomware is trying to take advantage of. No matter what kind of technique the attacker are using, at the end of the day, they are trying always to explore the Active Directory in order to learn the network. Now, Active Directory Intercept provides information what should be done to minimize the exposure. So Active Directory Intercept is not a management tool for Active Directory. It is a tool to identify configuration issues in the Active Directory. That the attacker that can be a potential a potential hazard, I would say, that the attacker can take it for their advantage and use it in order to get higher, first to learn the organization and then to get to escalate privilege, etc. Example of, you can see here example of different kind of reported issues, like you have too many administrators, you have a lot of inactive users, you have users that are vulnerable to server hosting and more. In parallel to that, the Active Directory, as I mentioned before, is also analyzing the security information logs of the Active Directory in order to detect usage of fake accounts, to detect anomalies like brute force attacks, to detect high number of account creation and deletion in a short period of time, to detect high rate of service tickets requests, and there are other anomalies, and this is something that we are continually adding more and more detection. So if we look at how it looks in the UI, you are getting this view, and each entry or rectangle here is a specific configuration issue here. So you can click it, and then you will get to see the relevant information. So, for example, here on the left side, you can see a list of users that are vulnerable to as report hosting. These accounts does not require pre-authentication, which might be used by the attacker. On the right side, there is an issue of orphan computer accounts. The accounts were not used for quite a long time. And just as, just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we had a deployment in one of our biggest account, and they deployed the Active Directory Intercept, and they were amazed to see that they have more than 1,000 accounts that haven't been used for over a year. So that's something that the security analyst must know as soon as possible. Then there is the analysis that we do on the Active Directory security information log. And as you can see here, we can identify attacks like brute force attack. In this example, it's password spraying. And we provide all the relevant information. Where does it come from, when it happened, and give you all the information about that asset that triggered the alert, where else did he access, etc. Okay, so to summarize, I would go over a list, not too many attacks, ransomware attacks, and let's see how the Fidelis products are able to identify the tactics that the attacker are doing. So on the left side, you have the ransomware, the MITRE tactic, and then the activity. On the right side is the detection engine and what is the method that is used in order to detect the activity. So the first ransomware example is using discovery and privilege escalation. Now, I did not listed here all the steps, tactics they are using, just several for each one so we can go over and understand what they are doing. So for the discovery, in order to find and access assets on the network, the ransomware access, the out table, where he finds the IP addresses and the corresponding MAC addresses, and that those addresses are used by the ransomware to directly access the assets, those assets with the IP and MAC address, in order to send wake on LAN. And the goal is to find, actually to find assets and try to encrypt. The deception-based method used here is to spoof the out table of assets, and this is done by setting the IP and the MAC addresses of the decoys in the out table, which means that every decoy is publishing or writing into, it's sending packets into asset in the organization, causing the asset to have the IP address and the MAC address of the decoy. And it lures the ransomware to interact with those decoys and immediately reveal those infected assets. The second part here is that the second tactic is the privilege escalation. For the privilege escalation, the ransomware is dumping the asset memory to find credentials they can use and crack. The, the deception technique to deal with that tactic is to set in the asset memory the fake account credentials that were defined before in Active Directory, which the ransomware is dumping at the end of the day. So the Active Directory intercept detects the usage of those credentials afterwards in the Active Directory information logs, or when the attacker is trying to use those credentials to access decoys or to access any other endpoint in the organization. The second example here in the table is communicating the second ransomware on the table. The ransomware is communicating with command and control, and it is also trying to get credentials in order to do privilege escalation. The deception together with the Active Directory, similar to the first example, is able to detect the ransomware by setting the fake accounts credentials in memory and analyzing the Active Directory. As for the command and control interaction and tools downloading, the NTA is detecting the tools download because it is able to look at the data, it is able to open the data, even if, as mentioned before, if it is compressed. It is also using its threat intelligence in case there is already threat intelligence about that command and control. And it's also able to identify or detect these activities by anomalies in the traffic. The downloading of the tools is detected by the deep session inspection that is able to go deeply into the payload and analyze. In the third example, the ransomware is looking for shared folders it can encrypt. This shared enumeration is detected on one hand by the NTA, either by rules or analytics. Both of them are able to detect the enumeration of shares. And when the ransomware is accessing in order to encrypt the file, following the usage of the breadcrumbs or other discovery operations. Now, there are several other examples here you can see that are that are using more or less the same tactics, and for each one of them, we have the how our detection engines are able to detect them. So, just to summarize how our products are covering those tactics that are being used by the attacker. So you can see that all those tactics are being covered either by one or more of our products. And I would like to say, to summarize, that as you can see, those products can work each by itself or can work together, which provide better coverage. They are actually integrated into Elevate. It's one product that is, you know, it's not only, it's the UI together and everything else working in one system. Questions, please.
Thank you, Doran. I would like to ask people, if possible, to put questions in the Q&A section. We're trying to enable the chat in case there are any questions to put in there. But also, please raise your hand and we can unmute you if you'd like to ask the question verbally. Thank you. I can see, Jorge, you had a hand raised. Would you like me to unmute you? I'm not seeing any Q&A coming in or chats. Just to say again, our chat is enabled if you'd like to ask the questions. We'll leave it a few seconds to let people type in their questions. Okay, I will unmute Vlad.
Oh, thank you. First of all, chat is disabled.
So apologies, I thought we were enabled it. It might be slight technical difficulty during midweek. Sorry, mid-meeting, apologies. We'll try to do that again.
Yeah, so thank you. There is, to be honest, there is, yeah, now it's activated. Thank you. So
Okay.
maybe all others can join to the question session. Yeah, so from my side, to be honest, there is no a lot of questions. Everything is understandable, and we are very long working with Fidelis products. So it's a good presentation. I think I will contact Doron. Maybe he will share his presentation to translate it for our region, because like we are distributors. Yeah, there is was good information about working with Active Directory. So I just want to thanks to Doron, and I, to be honest, don't have any question, but you enable the chat, and the other guys I see have some questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Vlad, for your comment. Thank you. We have a comment in a question actually from Jorge. He would like to ask Doran about the EDR component for Elevate.
Yeah, I didn't cover the EDR today, but the EDR is a very important part of our solution. It is actually it is also working with the sensor and the deception together. It provides you full activities of. I mean, it really depends to which level do you want the EDR to work. But if it's full-fledged, it will get you all the activities of anyone on the net on the endpoint. It collects data. Uh, all the access to file system, operations with file, all calls to the operating system. So it's a full-fledged EDR that is part of the Elevate technology. But we didn't have time to go over, another full product, and it's really a full product.
Okay, thank you, Doran. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you'd like to learn more or to schedule a demo of any of Fidelis solutions, please visit our website, which is fidelissecurity.com, and click on Schedule a Demo. I would like to thank you all again for joining us today. This presentation has been recorded, and the recording will be sent to you before the end of the day. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.